Ezekiel 36:28. Ezekiel 36:28. Okay, let's go ahead. We will be reading from the ESV version. If you don't have the same version, you can go ahead and read what is up there on the screen. Let's read it together in one voice. Ready? Go. You shall dwell in the land that I gave to your fathers, and you shall be my people, and I will be your God. Amen. So today I'm going to preach to you with the topic, you are mine and I am yours. So, quick song test. We got to start off with a song test, guys. Okay, I want you guys to try to guess what this song is. I'm going to just recite the lyrics like a poem. I'm going to do a poetical reading of this song. I'm going to try to do it out of rhythm so you have no idea what this song is. So I want you to try to listen and try to guess what this song is. Ready? The first person who guesses this song will get a nice big pat on the back. Oh, that's even better. We had more lights. Let there be light. Okay, ready? Well, you done me, and you bet I felt it, but I tried to be chill, and you're so hot that I melted that I felt right through the cracks. And now I'm trying to get back, but before the, oh, wow, okay. What was it? I'm Yours. Okay, by Jason Mraz. Oh, the wonderful serenading guy with the fedora. Yes, this is a song titled I'm Yours. For those of you who don't know what this song is, you're not really missing out on much. It's okay. You're fine. It's a beautiful song, actually. If I just keep reading through the lyrics, before the cool done run out, I'll be giving it my bestest. It's horrible grammar. And nothing's going to stop me but divine intervention. I reckon it's again my turn to win some or learn some, but I won't hesitate no more, no more. I cannot wait. I'm yours. I am yours. Like, let's just think about what that phrase means, right? I'm yours. I mean, it's such a nice, warm phrase, right? Think about going up to a significant other and serenading them with this wonderful Jason Mraz song. And after you're done playing guitar for them and singing them this sweet, sweet song, you go up to them in your most greasiest, lowest voice and you say, hey, babe, I'm yours. If this isn't making you cringe right now, there's something wrong with your hippocampus. You're not like properly processing emotions right now. You guys should all be cringing, right? Your fingers should all be like swollen up right now, and you shouldn't be able to look at my face right now. But all jokes aside, as much as most people will cringe at this line, it's actually really romantic if you really think about the meaning of this word. You know, while you may be laughing now, if someone in all seriousness, with every ounce of sincerity, said this to you, you would be moved, right? You would be moved. Without joking, if someone that you love and care for said to you in all seriousness, hey, I am yours. I'm all yours. That is honestly one of the best things you can hear. But what does it mean, right? It's such a bland sentence. Like, what does that actually mean? I want to talk to you today about what this phrase actually means to us. What does it mean to be yours? What does it mean to be somebody's? Our passage for today shows our God saying to his people Israel, you will be my people. I will be your God. So today, let's talk about what this means. Now, there are some easy ways to interpret and answer this question of what exactly this phrase means. The first one, the most simplistic and the most literal definition of what it means to be someone's is possession, right? The first way to understand this statement is from a perspective of possession. That apostrophe S, you guys hail back to your elementary school grammar classes, right? That apostrophe S that you stick on at the end of your name indicates that whatever follows that name is owned by you, right? That's what it means. Like, you possess it. Mary's bike, right? It is the bike that belongs to, it is the bike that Mary owns. It is Mary's. This is the most common form of the apostrophe S that we know. But can we apply this to human beings? Because that's what's happening here, right? When we say, I am yours, we're talking about a human being, right? We're not talking about an object. Does this work? Does this make sense? Can we own someone? Well, this certainly did make sense hundreds and thousands of years ago when it was culturally appropriate to own slaves, for those of you who know your history. I mean, even here in America, right? Less than 200 years ago, like only like what, 150 years since the Civil War? Only about 150 years ago, many African brothers and sisters were owned by Caucasian Americans. Now that abusive system has rightfully been abolished now by the grace of God. But it was lawful at that time for those slave owners to say that those slaves were theirs, right? It was lawful to say that. It wasn't right, but it was lawful to say that. When that slave would say to his master, "I am yours," it meant that the master literally and actually owned that slave. Their life, that slave's life, was not their own. It belonged to the master. So this is the most literal and simplest way to interpret the phrase, "I am yours." But let's be real here. I don't think Jason Mraz, with all his cute lyrics and cute fedora, was trying to, uphold the system of slavery with his song, right? I don't think that's what Jason Mraz was trying to get at. He was trying to say something else, right? Something much more endearing and romantic. And more importantly, far more important than what Jason Mraz was trying to do, let's take a look at our passage for today one more time, right? When God says to his people Israel, "You shall be my people and I will be your God," we can know with certainty that he is not talking about ownership. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I've heard many a sermon about how God is our master, right? Have you guys heard those kind of sermons before about how God is our true master? About how we need to give him our lives just as slaves gave their lives to their masters? Now, don't get me wrong. These sermons weren't trying to justify the system of slavery. That's not what it was saying, because the slavery that's written in the Bible is a very different type of slavery than the abusive system that we saw in America and other parts of the world. But rather, those sermons were trying to emphasize the beauty of living a life where our mastership, right, where the master of our life is not ourself, it is God. And I fully agree with that concept. I fully agree with that sermon. And if opportunity allows, I hope to preach on that topic one day, about how we have to give God the full lordship over our lives. Paul even calls himself a slave to righteousness. And living with this notion of God being the master of our lives is a very biblical way of living. But, I don't like how some preachers preach that sermon from this verse. You see, everything that I just explained about how God is our master and how we need to be slaves of righteousness, it's true, it's biblical. But it shouldn't be from this verse, because I don't think that's what this verse is saying. I find a slight problem here. You see, this is what it says. "You shall be my people and I will be your God." You see, pastors preach that when God says, "You shall be my people," we must be going under his ownership, like slaves would go under a master. Now, while this is absolutely true, I just don't think that's what this verse is trying to get at. And here's why. Let me read you the full verse one more time. "You shall dwell in the land that I gave to your fathers, and you shall be my people, and I will be your God." Do you guys see something here? God doesn't just unilaterally tell the people of Israel, "Oh, you guys are now my people. You guys are now under my ownership." That's not what he says here. That's not what God says. He makes this statement a mutual statement. Listen to what it says. "You shall be my people." And then what comes after that? "I will be your God." It's mutual. It's not just Israel that are God's. It's God who is theirs. In other words, if this verse were trying to say that Israel should be owned by God, then it would also be saying that God is owned by Israel. And we all know that that's wrong, right? That's just not biblical. Right? Nobody can own God. So this verse is definitely not saying that we need to be owned by anyone. That's not what this verse is trying to get at. Although it is biblical to say that God is indeed the master over our lives, that he does indeed own us. That is true, but that is not what this verse is trying to convey. So let's move on to the second possible interpretation, right? What else can this verse mean when God says, "You will be my people"? The second way to interpret this is from a perspective of belonging. And I'm sure you guys have heard this sermon before too. Belonging to God. When God says that the people of Israel are his, he is indicating a sense of belonging, a sense of affiliation. He's saying that Israel is not affiliated with any other gods or any other nations. Israel only belongs with God. Now, while this may have some overlap with the sense of possession that we just talked about, it is distinctly different. Let me give you an example. For example, one of the most popular actors in all of cinematic history right now. Come on, give me a name. No one? What did she say? Taylor what? Okay, come on. The whole world is being swept by Marvel, right? I Love You 3000. Come on, he's just been wasn't he like just inducted into like the Disney Hall of Fame or something? Robert Downey Jr. He's by far. Sam, hi. Terus, come in. Everyone, sit down. Sorry, I just totally put you guys in the spotlight. Robert Downey Jr. is one of the most highest paid actors, right? One of the most profitable and popular actors in America, right? And America takes so much pride in him. People often say, America's Robert Downey Jr., right? America's greatest actor. America's greatest actor. That apostrophe S is not signifying possession, is it? Right? This is a little different here. When we say it's America's greatest actor, they're saying that Robert Downey Jr. is not owned by America. They're saying that Robert Downey Jr. belongs to America, is affiliated with America, right? Another example would be Toronto Raptors' Kawhi Leonard. Past tense. Sorry, guys. I have to make fun of the Vancouver people every now and then. Right? What was I saying? Kawhi Leonard, yeah. He doesn't belong to the Raptors, but he isn't owned by the Raptors, right? But he is affiliated with the Raptors, with that team. That's why you say the Raptors Leonard, the Raptors Kawhi. You see, it means that you belong to a certain group. So going back to the Jason Mraz lyrics, when you say, I am yours, with this particular interpretation, you may be saying, I belong to you. I'm affiliated with you. And I am committed to this relationship with you enough to say that I do not belong anywhere else other than with you. Do you guys get what this is saying? It's not saying that you own me. It's me saying that I commit myself to you. It's really a beautiful take on this phrase, I'm yours. But, once again, we run into the same problem. If we now apply this to our verse in Ezekiel, we run into the exact same problem that we had with the first interpretation. It's the fact that this statement here is supposed to be mutual. You will be my people, and I will be your God. You see, it makes perfect sense to say that Israel is a people that belongs to God. But is it right to say that God belongs to Israel? That doesn't quite work, does it? You see, this type of belonging is not mutual. You can't say that the Toronto Raptors belongs to Kawhi Leonard. You can't say that America belongs to Robert Downey Jr., right? That's not how it works. This sense of belonging is not a mutual statement. Belonging in this particular case is when one individual belongs to something bigger, a bigger community, a bigger team, or a bigger movement. It makes sense to say that Israel belongs to God, but it doesn't make sense to say that God belongs in Israel. No one can find God like that. So now what? What does it mean? Right? We just went through the options. Those are the only two options that I could think of, right? When God says, you will be my people. Like, what else could that phrase possibly mean? How are we to understand this passage? What in the world does it mean to be God's people? You guys know the worship song, Who Am I by Casting Crowns? Right? Who am I that the Lord of all the earth? That beautiful song ends with the words, I am yours. It's one of the most beautiful lyrics out there. But what does that mean? Right? What does it mean to say, I am yours? You see, I thought I knew what it meant when I first, sang these lyrics. I thought it meant that I'm in God's possession, or that He's my master. I thought it meant that in God I belong, that I am affiliated with His identity, and that is how I identify myself. I thought that as someone who belongs to Him, that is who I am. But you see, there has to be more to this verse, because all of that is true. All of what I just said is true. It is biblical. There are ample biblical support to support these claims. But there has to be more to this verse that says, you will be my people and I will be your God, because it's mutual. So what does it mean to say that I am yours and you are mine? The best place to find the answer of what this means is to first note what God meant when He said that He would be our God. If we know what that means, then we can apply that interpretation to the first part of this verse as well. See, in this verse, God promises to his people Israel that he will be their God. Now, honestly, if you really think about it, this is a really strange promise. This is like a really, really strange promise. Because first of all, isn't God already their God? Right? Like, have you thought about this, right? This is God saying to the people of Israel, I will be your God. Wait, what the heck, God? Weren't you already our God? Like, what does this mean? Like, were you not our God until now? Like, what is God trying to say? You see, if you look at the history of when this statement was written, this verse is written here in the book of Ezekiel. And the book of Ezekiel was written by the prophet Ezekiel. And he was one of the Jewish exiles sent to Babylon when the kingdom of Babylon conquered Jerusalem in 597 BC. In other words, this was generations and generations later. Over a millennium had passed since God's original promises to Israel about how he was going to be their God. So why is God saying now, right, that he will be their God? It's really an interesting timing here. Actually, if you even look at the original Hebrew word, you can see that it was written in the imperfect tense. And the imperfect tense means that it was written with a future connotation. So the correct translation here is, I will be your God. It's not even, I am your God. It's, I will be your God. What is God saying here? Why is God saying that he will be their God when he, in fact, has been their God for the past hundreds of years? Is this making sense to you guys? This should be confusing, right? When you guys read through the Bibles, things like this should confuse you. Why is God saying this in the future tense? You see, just from this grammar alone, we can already know that this phrase is more than meets the eye. It's more than just a simple statement that God is going to be there for them, or that he will protect them. It's more than just that. It's more than just a kind father figure saying, oh, it's okay, I'm going to be your protector from now on, don't worry. That's not all that this verse is saying. There's more to this. Because you see, God has been doing that all along. There's something more. We need to look at the context of this verse. Let me read to you some previous verses leading up to verse 28. I'm going to read to you starting from verse 22. If you still have your Bibles open, you can follow along. Same chapter, Ezekiel 36, verses 22 through 28. Therefore say to the house of Israel, thus says the Lord God, it is not for your sake, O house of Israel, that I am about to act. This is God speaking. But for the sake of my holy name, which you have profaned among the nations to which you came. And I will vindicate the holiness of my great name, which has been profaned among the nations, and which you have profaned among them. And the nations will know that I am the Lord, declares the Lord God. When through you I vindicate my holiness before their eyes, and I will take you from the nations and gather you from all the countries and bring you into your own land. This is talking about salvation, people. God is going to deliver the people of Israel. And then God continues to say, I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you shall be clean from all your uncleanness, and from all your idols I will cleanse you, and I will give you a new heart, and a new spirit I will put within you, and I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. And I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes and be careful to obey my rules. You shall dwell in the land that I gave to your fathers, and you shall be my people, and I will be your God. This is a series of promises that God is giving to his people. For those of you who know your Old Testament very well, you know exactly what this passage is talking about. This is talking about what we call the new covenant. So today we're going to be discussing the new covenant. And I'm actually really excited to do this because I've been wanting to do this with our New York members for a while now. So we're going to talk about the first half. And this sermon is too long. If I preach on the new covenant as much as my heart pleases, you guys won't be able to sleep tonight. We'll be like Paul, right? Preach until midnight. Some of you guys will fall out the window, but you won't die because we're on the first floor. Yeah. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, you should have listened on the first day. We're going to preach the first half today and the second half tomorrow. But this is about the new covenant, this promise, this covenant that God is making with Israel here, right now in this verse, in these verses, is a new one. We also see another prophet talk about this covenant, the same covenant in Jeremiah 31. The prophet Jeremiah talks about it as well. And we're going to talk about the differences between the old and new covenant tomorrow. But for now, I want to focus on the fact that this language used here was used in a covenantal setting. So when God says, you will be my people and I will be your God, he's talking covenant language here. This isn't just regular speech. This isn't just a cute Jason Mraz song saying, I'm yours. No, this is God giving to his people his covenant. See, a covenant, for those who don't know, is a type of agreement or contract. It's a fancy Old Testament word for that. It's actually a much stronger word than a mere contract. The word contract doesn't do covenant justice. The word agreement is nowhere near the severity of a covenant. We're going to talk about why that's the case later. But for those of you who don't know, just for now, just think of the word covenant as some type of agreement between two parties. It's like a contract. This phrase that we are looking at here, I will be your God, is a phrase that was often found whenever God was making this type of covenant. We see it all throughout the Old Testament. We see it notably in Ezekiel 36, which we just read together. And then Jeremiah 31 is also talking about the new covenant. This is what it says in Jeremiah 31:33. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, declares the Lord. I will put my law within them. I will write it on their hearts. I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Same language, almost word for word. I will be their God, they shall be my people. We also see this language further back in the Old Testament when God talks about the old covenant, right? New covenant means that there was a old covenant, right? Classic logic here. Exodus 6, verses 6 through 7. Say therefore to the people of Israel, I am the Lord. This is God talking to Moses. And I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians, and I will deliver you from slavery to them, and I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great acts of judgment. This is God promising his people of Israel, I am going to save you from your slavery in Egypt. Your 400 years of slavery, I am going to save you from it. This is God's covenant, his promise that he was giving to the people of Israel. And right after he said that, in verse 7, God says, I will take you to be my people, and I will be your God. Same language. Same language. Genesis 17, verse 7. And I will establish my covenant between me and you and your offspring. This is God talking to Abraham. After you, throughout their generations, for an everlasting covenant to be God to you and to your offspring after you. This is God saying to Abraham, I will be your God. I will be your descendants' God. This is what we call just now, what I just read to you, that's the Abrahamic covenant. The first promise that God made with Abraham to make his descendants many and to be their God. Guys, isn't this fascinating? Like this promise that God keeps making in the Old Testament, this promise that he will be their God, is more than a simple promise. It is more than just a casual reassurance. It is part of a covenant that he is making with his people. Now let's talk about what exactly this covenant is. A covenant is actually, it sounds all nice, right? Covenant. Covenant. Sounds like a nice little word. In the modern day languages, we usually use the word covenant with marriage. Have you guys heard of that? A marriage covenant, right? A marriage is also one of those things where we make like a contract, an agreement, a covenant, where a man and wife agree to be one. That's a nice warm feeling, right? Marriage covenant. But let's take a look at what covenant actually is. It's kind of scary, actually. The word covenant is a very particular word. When you study a word, it's always important to do a little bit of etymological research, right? You need to find the origin of the word and figure out what it means. The Hebrew word used here in these verses, in Jeremiah 31 and in Genesis 17, the Hebrew word for covenant is berit. Berit. That's the word that we use. Now, this word is really interesting because there is another Hebrew word that is used in conjunction with berit. It is the verb karath. So you say karath, you always use this together. If you want to make a covenant with someone, in Hebrew, it would be karath berit. Does this make sense? You make a covenant, you establish a covenant, right? Karath berit. But the meaning of karath is really weird. For those of you who may study Hebrew in the future, karath is a very weird word because karath literally means, does anyone have any idea? Can you make a guess on what karath means? Karath. No one? It's okay. There's no way you'll guess this. Karath literally means to cut. Does this make sense to anybody right now? Because it did not make sense to me at all when I first learned this word. You know, when you study I don't know, for those of you who study foreign languages, do you guys like make up those like nice like mnemonics and like those like clever little tricks to memorize vocab words, right? I did that when I learned Hebrew as well. So karat means to cut. Karate, cut. So I still remember this word, right? It's such, now you guys know. You guys will never forget this word, right? Karate. It means to what? To cut. There you go. Man, I'm so good at this. Karat means to cut. So when in the Bible, when you see karat berit, it means to cut a covenant. But if you look in your English translations, it's never going to say that. Only in the most literal translations, like maybe like the KJV or some of the older versions, only the most literal translations will say to cut a covenant. If you look in most translations, what will you find? Make a covenant. Establish a covenant. Because that's just better English, right? That's how people can understand it better. But the word actually literally means to cut. So isn't this weird? Like where does this meaning come from? To cut a covenant. To cut a covenant. We can see what it means if we look at the tradition that was behind a covenant in the Old Testament. If we look in Genesis 15, that's where God makes his covenant with Abraham. And it says there in Genesis 15:18, karat berit, God cut a covenant with Abraham. In Genesis 15 verses 9 through 10, it shows you the preparation of how to establish and cut this covenant. And let me read for you these verses. He said to him, God said to Abraham, actually he was still Abram at this time. God said to Abram, bring me a heifer 3 years old, and a female goat 3 years old, and a ram 3 years old, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. And he brought all of these, and he cut them, karat, in half, and laid each half over against the other. But he did not cut the birds in half. And when the birds of prey came down on the carcasses, Abram drove them away. So this scene here that's described in Genesis 15, this is a very vivid depiction of a covenant ceremony. So this is what you do. This is what they used to do when they made covenants in the Old Testament. You see, nowadays when you make an agreement, what do? The two of you sit down, maybe bring a lawyer, sign some forms, right? And boom, you have a contract. Well, this is how they used to do it in the Old Testament. They made covenants. And this is how they made covenants. They brought little heifers and goats, sheep, animals, doves. And then what do? Cut them in half. Oh, this was not a neat ordeal, guys. This was messy. It was real messy. There was blood splattered everywhere. They cut it in half. Put one side of the animal here, put the other side here. And then when the two parties would come to an agreement, they would both walk through in between those two cut animals. And that signified something. It meant, if I ever break this covenant, so be it unto me. I would be like these animals. In other words, it would be better for me to be cut in half like these bloody animals here than for me to break the covenant that I just made with you. This word covenant isn't so cute anymore, is it? It's kind of gruesome. It's kind of messy. It's bloody. This was the strongest contract anyone could ever muster at that time. No lawyer, no accountant can come up with a stronger and more binding agreement. This was a contract signed with blood. It was a blood contract. But now read what happens in verses 17 through 18 of that chapter. When the sun had gone down, it was dark. And behold, a smoking pot, a smoking fire pot, and a flaming torch passed between these pieces. On that day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying to him, to your offspring, I give this land. The smoking fiery pot and the random torch that you see here, can you just imagine that? Like just a pot on its own, just kind of hopping through in between the animals. That's what's happening here. This smoking fiery pot and this torch is symbolic of God's manifested presence in that place. What's another example of when fire came down on a bush, and that signified God. With Moses in the burning bush, right? That was God's presence right there in that fire. Same thing here. This fiery smoking pot and the flaming torch, that was God's presence right there, manifested on earth in a visible way. What did this fire do? Behold, the flaming torch passed between these pieces. In other words, the God of the universe, the Creator God, just made this ridiculous blood oath with a mortal man named Abram. This was God's covenant with him, his everlasting promise. Now get this, this was the Abrahamic covenant that he made with Abraham. But God also makes a Mosaic covenant with Moses and the people of Israel afterwards, which is when he says again to the people of Israel, you will be my people and I will be your God. Brothers and sisters, guys, this phrase is not just some wishy-washy claim. This is God's eternal promise, his eternal covenant to us, something that he will keep no matter what. He walked through those bloody animals. God himself walked through those bloody animals saying, this is what will happen to me if I do not uphold my end of the bargain. This is what God was saying about himself. He was saying, I will be split in half. My blood will be shed if I do not keep this promise with you. Now, for those of you who are good at piecing things together, you may have already jumped to the New Testament application to this, right? You go, oh, what? God shedding blood? Oh, I know something about that, right? What God shedding blood incident do we know of, guys? Jesus' death on the cross. Absolutely. See, the old covenant needed blood to inaugurate it, right? To make it official. It was like the stamp. It was like the signature. You needed blood to make a covenant official. So the old covenant required these sacrifices. Likewise, that is why there was the blood of the animals for Abraham's covenant. And now, if you know the New Testament application to this, you know for the new covenant to also come into effect, we needed another source of blood. We needed another sacrifice. And who was that sacrifice for us? Jesus. It was by Jesus' shed blood. The Holy Lamb, Jesus Christ, was that sacrificial animal who was shed to put the new covenant into action. Some of you may piece these two things together and be like, oh, that makes sense, right? God said that he would be like those sacrificed animals. And wow, God really did become the ultimate sacrifice for our sins. But if that's the connection you make, you're making a huge mistake here. Here's where it's wrong. Let me reiterate for you the terms of the covenant, okay? If I do not uphold my end of the bargain, then let my body be torn in half like these animals. That's what the covenant was. That's not what happened in the Bible. Let's take a look at Israeli history. It was never God who failed on the covenant. God never failed. God never broke his promises. He was always faithful to Israel. It was always Israel that broke the promise. It was always Israel that failed, right? God said to them, be holy, do not sin, do not worship idols, do not worship other gods. Obey the here are the 10 commandments. They're really easy rules, guys. Just please follow the 10 commandments. He gave them the covenant laws to abide by. And he said and made the promise of the old covenant. This is what the old covenant was. The old covenant was, if you abide by all of these laws that I just gave to you, which are designed to keep you safe and in my presence, then I will always be there to bless you and to keep you safe. This is the old covenant. Old covenant was God saying, hey, here are some rules to keep you safe. Please keep them. Please keep them. If you keep them, then I can keep blessing you. If you break them, then I can't bless you anymore. That was the old covenant. But looking at history shows us that it was always Israel who failed over and over and over again. In other words, God upheld his end of the deal. God did his part. God was faithful to Israel. God abided by his agreements in the contract. It was Israel that voided the covenant. Israel was the one who should have been torn in half like these bloody animals. Israel was the one to pay the fee for breaking the contract early. But look at what God chose to do instead. Do you see how beautiful the sacrifice of Jesus Christ is now? Do you guys see this? You see, this is why I tell our New York people that you guys have to read through the entire Bible several times in order. It doesn't just work reading snippets by snippets. It changes your perspective on things once you get an entire general idea of the biblical narrative of what is happening in God's Word. You see, Jesus' crucifixion is not just limited to the first 4 books of the New Testament. That's what a lot of people think, right? They're like, what, Jesus' crucifixion? Oh yeah, I find that in the Gospels, right? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Some people may go on and expand that to the New Testament. They think Jesus' crucifixion is captured in the New Testament. But guys, look at this here. Look at this here. If you look at Jesus' sacrifice in the light of everything that happened in the Old Testament, if you look at his gruesome, bloody outcome of Jesus' death in light of the covenant, you can just see how faithful God really is. You see, God had every right to abandon this traitorous country. He had every right to leave the covenant and to say, hey guys, I did my part. You broke the covenant. So I'm going to peace out now. He had every right to back out and to abandon his people. Every right. But he didn't. He kept his bargain. He abided by his promise. Actually, no, he went further, didn't he? He not only kept his promises, he even bore the penalty of Israel breaking their end of the deal. Dearly beloved, this is the extent to which God would go to keep his promise to you. When God says, I will be your God, this is what it means. It's not just a cute song anymore, guys. It means I will keep my promise regardless of how miserably you fail yours. I will remain faithful even if you are faithless. I will be with you even if you depart from me. Guys, how many times have you left God? Let's be honest here. Just think about that. Right? None of us are perfect. None of us are perfect. We've all done it at some point. Just think about it. How many times have you left him? How many times have you left him in the dust? Left him behind? Departed from his presence? Fell from his glory? Willingly stepped away from God? How many times? How many times have you chosen some other worldly pleasure, some other selfish desire over God? How many times have you sinned knowingly, knowing that it brings pain to God's heart? Yet you still sinned anyway because it brought you momentary pleasure. How many times? For me, it was far too many. Far too many have I failed. And I'm talking about after I met God, right? Like after I became a Christian. I'm not even talking about my life before God. Even after I became a Christian, far too many. Far too many times have I left him. Have I failed him? Far too many times after I've met God have I disappointed him. Far too many times have I departed from his presence, sinned and fallen. Far too many times. But yet, not once did God ever abandon me. Not once did God ever abandon you. Because when Israel failed over and over and over again, God still kept his side of the bargain. God still said to them, I will be your God. You know, I share this with our New York group often, but if you read through the entire Old Testament, it's actually it's a really repetitive story. Right? New York people, you guys know what I'm talking about, right? The people of Israel, right? I'm going to summarize the Old Testament for you. It's really simple. The people of Israel are suffering, right? They're in slavery or some sort of confinement. They're being conquered. So what do? They cry out to God. They repent from their sins and cry out to God. God has mercy on them. He loves them. So what does he do? God sends them a leader like Moses or Joshua or Gideon or so many of the other judges, right? God sends them a leader because he is faithful and he delivers them out. But then not long after, guys, what happens again? Israel leaves God. They start worshiping some other idols, some other god of a foreign country. And then God's just like, okay, come on, again, guys, I just saved you, right? So they fall to this same trap over and over. And when they get captured by the enemies again, what do? They're like, oh God, sorry, save us again. And then they repent. So God has mercy again. He's like, okay, I'm going to send you another person. He sends another prophet, another leader. And then they repent and they come back out to God. And they're like, yes, God. What happens right after that again? Israel falls again to sin. They worship idols again. Guys, this happens over and over and over again. This is the summary of the Old Testament. It gets kind of repetitive. It's the same story, just with different names, different prophets, different kings. After a while, when you read through the Old Testament, you start to think to yourself, like, really, Israel? Like, come on. Like, how dumb can you be? Like, how stubborn can you be? Like you saw God save you. Like I look at the people of Moses' time, right? Like, you saw the Red Sea split in half. How in the world can you start worshiping a golden calf? Like, right after that happened, right after you saw bread fall from the sky, water come out of rocks. How in the world can you leave God and worship a golden calf? But that's when I had that thought, that's when God showed me my life. Oof. That's when God showed me my life. He showed me that moment when I witnessed God's incredible love in my life. That moment when I became a born-again Christian, a good Christian. I felt his power in my life at that moment. And I thought, I'm different now. I am different now. I am God's man now. But I fall. I sin. When I recognize that, I bow down in repentance and call upon God's holy name. And he once again, he is a God of mercy and he is good. So he picks me up and he washes me clean and he delivers me from that weaknesses. But what happens not too long after that? I fall again. I promised God that I wouldn't sin like this, but I do it again. I do it again. Guys, I'm being very general here, but really it can be various different things. It can be various different sins that I'm talking about. For some, this sin that you fall to over and over again can be lying. All right? Simple sin, but it's a sin that many of us are tied down to. Lying. We tell God that we won't ever lie again because lying is a sin of the devil, right? The devil is the father of lies. It's one of the worst sins that we can do. But when we are off guard, we blurt out another lie to cover up for another mistake that we made. Maybe for some brothers, this problem is lust. Addiction to pornography is a really common one for brothers. We promised God that I would never again fall to such sexual immorality. But one day, we're watching something and it triggers old memories and we find ourselves searching for that forbidden thing that I know is definitely sinful. Maybe for some sisters, this sin is greed or selfishness or anger. We know we're not supposed to envy our fellow sisters. We know we're not supposed to base our self-worth on the body images that society poses upon us. But we do it anyway because that's what everyone else is doing. We all fall to these different types of sins that we have in our lives. You see, the sin can vary between each individual, but the effects are the same. Brothers and sisters, we are Israel. We're Israel. That stubborn nation that fell over and over and over again. That stubborn nation that got saved by God, saw his power, but then decided to go back and worship other idols again. Guys, that's us. That's us. That's you and me. This isn't just some history lesson about a kingdom far away. That's us, guys. That's us. That repetitive story of falling over and over and over again and God saving us over and over and over again. God, that is not just a story in the Old Testament. That is our life right there. But here's where the good news kicks in. See, our God is a God that comes to our rescue over and over and over again. When we fail, it feels like our world is crumbling beneath our feet because we have failed on our end of the bargain, right? We have failed to keep our end of the contract. God said, be good and keep my laws, and I will keep you safe and be faithful to you. But we failed that, didn't we, right? We failed to keep his laws. We have failed to be good people. There's not a single one of us here that has succeeded in being a good person. If you do not see that, if you do not acknowledge that, then you don't need the gospel, do you? Right? If you can be a good person on your own, then you don't need Jesus. You don't need Jesus. There's no reason for you to be a Christian. Why would you need him if you're already good? No. We're a Christian because we've all failed. Because we're all failures. We have failed in being God's holy people. We are Israel. But the God who no longer has any obligation to keep the contract that he made with us has decided out of his great love and mercy to still remain faithful to us. What's more is that God decided to bear the consequences of our breaking of the covenant. It's our bodies that should be torn in two. The price for sin is death, Romans 6:23. But Jesus instead bore that price for us. He had every reason to turn his back on us, to abandon us, to leave us in our misery and our evil ways. But instead, he decided to pay our debt for us. We're going to talk more about what it means to be in debt. But I want to focus for now on the fact that the God that we see in the Bible is a God of love and mercy who comes after us, who comes to find us. Broken us, we who are failures, he comes after us over and over and over again. We fail so many times, but he comes after us each and every time. He leaves the 99 sheep to come looking for that one sheep who runs away. Guys, you guys know, one of the most powerful, you guys know reckless love, right? We sang it on the first day, I think. Reckless love of God. You know, when Corey Asbury was singing that song, he made a clarification on what he meant by those lyrics, reckless love of God. Some people are like, God's love is reckless? Like, that's such a negative word to associate with God's love, right? But you see, that's not what Corey Asbury meant. He's not saying that God's love is chaotic and without order. No, God is a very orderly being. When he says that God's love is reckless, this is what he's talking about. He will break down doors. He will break down barriers. He will find you and be faithful to you over and over and over again. Brothers and sisters, do you see the goodness of God in this gospel? Can you see now the goodness of God in your lives? Some of you may think, man, how has God been good to me? He's only given me hardship. Man, you guys are blind if you don't see God's goodness in your lives. Despite your failures, despite you having broken your side of the covenant, God is still standing there saying, I will be your God. You may have departed from me. You may no longer call yourself my people, but I will always be your God. This is the faithfulness of the Lord. This is the covenant faithfulness of the Lord. This is what God means when he says, I will be your God. Guys, I want you to know that what I'm preaching to you right now, this is only half of the full message. We don't have time to do the whole thing right now. There's another half to this message that we're going to talk about tomorrow evening. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about the second part of the covenant, the part where we then become his people. For God said, you will be my people, and I will be your God. We're going to take a closer look at what that means and how exactly that becomes possible later. We're going to do that tomorrow. Oh man, guys, tomorrow's sermon is such a powerful message. Today I'm talking about the faithfulness of God, but tomorrow I'm going to talk about how we can actually live that life. It's the second half of the new covenant. And if you fully understand the message that I'm going to give to you tomorrow, I guarantee you 100% your life will change. If you fully let tomorrow's message sink deep into you, your life has to be different. It will change. Because the Romans 1:16, it says the gospel is the power of God that is capable of transforming a person. And tomorrow I will share with you the entirety of that wonderfully simple and powerful message of the gospel that he promises through the new covenant. But that's tomorrow. For tonight, I just want to focus on this first half of the covenant. This promise that God gives to us. This promise that says, I will be your God. Remember how I said that it was weird that this promise was in the future tense, right? Remember how I said that it didn't make sense, right? When Ezekiel wrote this verse, it had already been hundreds and hundreds of years, over a millennium since God had been God over Israel. Yet here in Ezekiel, around 600 BC, God is saying that he will be their God in their future. Well, we just discussed today, we just found out today what that meant. When Ezekiel is saying that God will be their God, he is pointing to a specific event in the future. One very specific event. There's one very specific event that ties together God's covenant faithfulness. There was one event that was in the future from Ezekiel's perspective. And that one event would perfectly capture what exactly God meant when he said, I will be your God. And that event is the death of Jesus on the cross. That's what he was pointing to. That's why it's in the future tense. I will be your God. Going back to the first question we asked today, that question that says, what did God mean when he says, I will be your God? It's this. It was more than just a nice, lovely line. It was more than just a matter of possession or a sense of belonging or a sense of affiliation. It was pointing to the future crucifixion of Jesus Christ. It was God saying, I will be your God by dying for you. I will stay faithful to the covenant between you and me, and I will even bear the price of your failures and shortcomings. I will die on your behalf. That is how I will be your God. You guys see the full meaning of this now. Dearly beloved, if this is what it means for God to be ours. Remember what I said about this verse? It's mutual, right? It's mutual. If this is what it means for God to be ours, what does it mean for us to be his? This means that we need to apply this exact same principle in our lives. This means that when God says that we will be his people, he's not just talking about possession or affiliation or a sense of belonging. He's talking about a covenant commitment that is so strong that we will be able to lay down our lives for him. Just as how God would say, I am yours, despite all of your shortcomings. It means that we will say to God, God, I am yours, despite all of the hardships and persecutions that may come with me being your disciple. It means that we are now capable of giving our lives to him, just as he gave his life for us. That is the mutual covenant. Brothers and sisters, this phrase, I am yours, is the most beautiful thing we can ever say to someone. I think this is one of the most beautiful things we can say to God. When God said it to us, I will be your God, he meant it in that most beautiful way. He meant, guys, I'm yours. Guys, my life is yours. God was saying to us, guys, I'm going to give my life for you. This is the covenant commitment that God was making when he said that. So when he says that you will be my people, it means that we will become capable of making that exact same claim to God, saying to God, God, I am yours. My life is yours. I am going to give my life for you. Now, tomorrow I'm going to focus on how exactly we can live that life, that kind of life. But for tonight, my goal is to instill in all of you the desire to live that life. A life that has been given to the Lord. Guys, do you want this? Do you all desire this? Church, do you guys want this? Like some people are like, nah, Pastor Danny, you can live like that. But I'll keep my life to myself. I don't really want to give my life to anyone. My life is too precious. I'm just going to live my life however I want to. Guys, if that is your response to this sermon, you have missed the entire point of the sermon. When God is promising, what God is promising here, when God is promising here in this new covenant that you will be able to confess, God, I am yours, He is not forcing you into this kind of life-offering commitment to God. No, He is saying that you will come to enter into a relationship with God that is just so full of love. It means that you will come to love God so much that you will genuinely want to say to Him, God, I am yours. Take my life, God. Take my life, for it is yours. It means that you may have failed until now. It means that you may have tried to live a good life that God would enjoy and approve of. But honestly, you failed until now, right? But now, God is promising us here in Ezekiel that we will now soon be capable of making that genuine statement. God, I'm all yours. God, I am yours. That is how in love with God we can be. That is the beauty of the new covenant. Guys, be ready for the secret on how to achieve this tomorrow. I'm not going to tell you that secret today. Some of you guys are already like, tell me now, but no, tomorrow. But for now, I want to focus on that great promise that God has given us. I want you all to want this, because no matter how much it's not going to matter if I give you the secret tomorrow if you don't want this. It's as simple as that. Tomorrow I'm going to give you the secrets to living this kind of perfect life, but it's going to have no effect on your life if you don't want this. If you don't want to live a holy life, if you don't want to live a life that is pleasing to the Lord, it's useless. My sermon tomorrow is going to be absolutely useless. It's just going to bounce off of your faces. The whole point of today's sermon is to get you to want this, guys. You need to want this. You need to desire this. I want to focus on that great promise that God has given us, the promise that He will be ours, that He will be our God. Guys, this was not a light promise. This was a promise to give His life for us. Guys, how many of you guys can reciprocate this love back to God right now? When God says that we will be His people and that He will be our God, it meant being able to die for each other. Are we at that level of wanting to give our lives to God? Are you guys there yet? Are you there? Are you able to offer your lives up to Him? Or are you too scared? Remember that God didn't wait for our answer before giving up His life. He didn't wait to see if we were faithful to Him. Remember that God decided to be faithful to us even when we were not. Remember that Romans 5:8 says that He loved us while we were still sinners. Remember that even when we left Him, He decided to keep His faithfulness in His covenant promise to stay by your side. Remember all those moments when you may have left His side, but He never left yours. Remember His faithfulness, and let us seek a heart that can reciprocate that love now. Before we enter a time of praying, I want to ask Sister Kent to play for us. Can you play Reckless Love? And if you can get Reckless Love ready for our prayer. I want to explain this really famous picture that very accurately describes God's faithfulness to us. Have you guys ever seen online, it's one of those like inspirational quote kind of things. It's like a picture of a nice, beautiful beach and a set of footprints. Some of you guys know what I'm talking about. It's a prayer, it's a story that someone gives to God. It's a prayer that someone says to Him. He says, God, when I look back on my life, I see 2 pairs of footprints in the sand. when I look back on my life, I see that you were walking with me side by side. God, when I see those footprints, it brings me joy. It brings me gladness. But this person goes on to say, but God, I remember this one point in my life where I had a really hard time. Wait, God, I remember this year I was struggling so bad. I remember this year, but God, what? There's only one set of footprints. God, why is there only one set of footprints when I needed you the most? You know what God said? He said, my child, that was when I carried you. Guys, this is the faithfulness of our God. He is a God that never leaves your side. No matter how great your sin may be, no matter how great your shortcomings, He will not leave you. He will not forsake you. He will not abandon you. He is a God of love, a God of mercy, a God of faithfulness, a God who abides by His covenant. He is a God that shouts out to the world, these are my people. I am their God. He is saying to each and every one of you, do you feel alone? Do you feel weak? Do you feel unworthy to receive my grace? Well, I have something to say to you tonight. I am your God. I always have been, and I always will be. All we need to do is repent and turn to this faithful God. It's that simple, guys. It's that simple. It's not automatic. That's what Calvinists say. It's not automatic. We do have to do something. We do have to respond. And that response is to simply turn to Him. God's standing right here. He's ready to receive us, to give us the grace that we need to welcome us back into His arms. All we need to do is turn to Him and say, God, I fell. God, I'm sorry. God, I'm weak. God, this is the best I could do. God, take me now. God, I am yours. Let's pray this prayer now. If we can turn off the lights and take this time to pray this prayer. Guys, if you want to receive the faithfulness of God's covenant, if you want to enter into this covenant relationship with God one more time, if you want to proclaim to God, God, I need you in my life. I need you to be my God once again. I need to commit my life to becoming your child once again. Guys, if you want to seriously make this commitment once again right now, I invite you to come forward and pray up front. I invite you to take this time right now to kneel before God, to kneel in humility, to kneel in desperation, to cry upon the faithfulness of the covenant, Lord, to say to Him, God, I need your faithfulness right now. God, I need your faithfulness right now in my life. God, I am so broken. I am Israel. I am Israel. I have fallen over and over and over again. I have failed over and over and over again. God, I need your reckless love to come over my life right now. I need your covenant faithfulness to save me again, God, to take me out of this wretched cycle, to save me from the pit of my demise and of my sin. God, I repent before you right now. God, we repent our sins before you. God, we acknowledge that it is not okay to fall, that it is not okay to be tempted by sin. All those times that I have failed, all those times that I have disappointed you, God, it's not okay. It wasn't okay. But yet, God, you remain faithful to us. God, you have remained faithful to me. God, you have remained faithful to me when I have deserted you, when I have failed you, when I have failed you, when I have failed you, you have remained faithful to me. Lord, shower us with your reckless love right now. Lord, shower us with your reckless love right now, God. God, we need your reckless love right now. We don't need a calm love. We don't need a passive love. Lord, we need your reckless love right now. The kind of love that breaks down doors. The kind of love that breaks through the forces of Satan in my life. The kind of love that dissolves the powers of darkness in my life. Of love that overpowers my weaknesses. That reckless love is what we need right now, God. Father, pour it out upon us. Pour it out upon us. Pour it out upon us.